Indica from developer Oddmeter and publisher 11-Bit Studios has arrived at last, and I can say with confidence I've never played a game quite like it. But is Indica holier than thou, or does it take the Lord's name in vain? Let's find out in our full review. Before we get into it, why not show I Dream of Indie Games some love and compassion? Head over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames and you'll gain Discord access, early ad-free shows, shoutouts at the end of every video we produce, and even free games depending which tier you select. Your new indie gaming community is waiting for you.
What are you waiting for? Take everything off.
You crazy?
Indica is a third-person narrative-heavy puzzle adventure game taking place in an alternate version of Russia during the early stages of the 20th century. The fictionalized events of the story occur before the Russian Revolution and place you under the veil of Indica, a young nun and member of a strict monastery. Life within the walls of the monastery is not easy for Indica, as she is constantly berated by her superiors and forced to perform monotonous daily tasks. Even worse, she has a voice living inside her head, which she believes to be the devil. Without giving away too many story details, the day arrives where Indica must venture outside of the confines of her institution. This leads her to meeting an unlikely ally and brings to question the very faith that has defined the vast majority of her life. Indica's writing is thought-provoking, abstract, and compelling, but is also relentlessly bleak. Fans of art house films will likely be awed by its non-conventional storytelling methods. This is the black swan of video games, the requiem for a dream. Indica is a layered character who begins to question her relationship with God. Her backstory is explored through bizarre retro pixelated minigames, serving to remind us that we're still playing a video game, yet the line between game and film has never felt so blurred. Let me preface this review by saying Indica is not going to be for everyone. Despite the fact that it is a work of fiction, its themes are destined to rub certain audiences the wrong way. If it wasn't obvious, a game about a nun experiencing a mental breakdown with a devil living inside of her won't exactly resonate with all walks of life. Like any good art house film, Indica will raise eyebrows, generate discussions, and leave audiences both awestruck and divided. As a video game, it is much easier to dissect. When it's not a mind-bending, surreal narrative experience, Indica is a third-person puzzle adventure game with a heavy emphasis on the puzzles. Much of your gameplay is linear, and while you won't discover historical accuracies across this 5 to 7 hour campaign, the developers have gone above and beyond in painstakingly recreating building architecture that helps better convey the time period in which the game takes place. It's a good thing that the game is strikingly beautiful, as you'll be doing a good amount of walking throughout this adventure. You'll occasionally perform thrilling tasks such as repeatedly filling up buckets of water. While moments such as these may not seem exciting from a gameplay standpoint, and they aren't, that's kind of the point. The player truly feels like they're experiencing the monotony of Indica's life, and there's something deeply upsetting and compelling about that. When Indica is free to explore her environment a bit more, she can occasionally find little trinkets which are unsurprisingly religious themed. While rich with lore and backstory, some of these hidden objects award you seemingly meaningless points. As I alluded to earlier, Indica is a video game within a video game. Throughout the campaign, you'll be reminded of that fact often, as you gain arbitrary levels, points, and wonder what it's all for. As a puzzle game, Indica truly begins to shine. Players will encounter a good variety of puzzles in between the head-spinning cinematics and light exploration. Puzzles range from relatively basic to expertly designed, but they all feel manageable and satisfying to unravel. Some of my favorite puzzles involve the voice in Indica's head maniacally taunting her, only calmed by her ability to pray. Shifting between these two mental states alters the game's environment, with the goal being to ultimately create a path forward. Another puzzle had me carefully pushing a block while having to keep my eye on a demonic entity who would match my every movement. The level of creativity that went into the puzzle design is impressive, making for many of the game's best moments. The visuals in Indica are stunning, with the game looking like it wouldn't feel out of place in the AAA marketplace. From its jaw-dropping environments, which feature gorgeous lighting, to the character models themselves, Oddmeter have crafted a beautiful experience. It can be a bit dark at times thematically and in its looks, with Indica's lamp not always supplying enough light. And it does feature a few awkward animations here or there, mainly when Indica is hopping down ledges, but overall this is a technical marvel to behold. Indica reminds you that it's a video game in other unfortunate ways with some technical issues. On my 4070, the game mostly ran beautiful at ultra settings using the 1440p resolution, but I say mostly because a few awkward frame drops did come up from time to time. These sudden hitches were very random and just frequent enough to break my immersion. I did test the game on other settings just to see if ultra was too much to handle for a 4070, but that didn't seem to be the case. The hitches are very random and just frequent enough to break immersion. Thankfully, the second half of the game runs much better than the first, in my experience. Certain cutscenes also froze entirely on me, never game-breaking, but just enough to be a nuisance and pull you out of the story. The same can be said for the game's numerous bugs. There were multiple times throughout Indica where I thought I was missing an element required to solve a puzzle, only to discover that a certain character animation never triggered, making the puzzle impossible to solve, and therefore it was impossible to advance in the game. A lot of little things like that start adding up and hurt the entirety of the experience. Hopefully many of my issues will be resolved in a day one patch. Unfortunately, I was unable to test Steam Deck performance as I like to in my reviews, as the developer will be working on a Steam Deck specific build that was not available at the time of this recording. It's good to know that they will have the portable audience in mind at the least, though I shudder at what sacrifices may need to be made to get such a beautiful game optimized for handheld play. As far as sound design is concerned, Indica shines.
Servant of God, Seraphim, I shall know.
Voice performances were also pretty good, particularly the lead character Indica. Though the characters are a bit soft-spoken, the voice actors and actresses do a pretty good job of fitting the overall vibe of the game. Gruesome sound effects impress, but Indica's soundtrack is also quite dynamic and surprisingly quirky at times. Compositions can range from having a serious tone to abstract noises and sudden tonal shifts that work to brilliant effect. Believe it or not, the game even has a bit of a sense of humor at times, and the unusual melodies that fill these moments are just as surprising and delightful. All told, Indica looks and sounds beautiful. Indica, it's a game that I had to marinate on for days after completing it. On one hand, its narrative grabbed me firmly by the throat, and it never let go until its waning moments. Indica herself is a character I fell in love with, but I hated what happened to her in the game's abrupt closing moments. It is a game that left me feeling pretty empty and unsatisfied, and yet strangely, that also seemed like how the game wanted me to feel. Its puzzles feature moments of brilliance, and its graphics are amazing, yet the strong narrative focus of the game may leave players who seek a bit more action feeling unsatisfied, and its technical shortcomings can be frustrating at times. Not even factoring all of that, the very existence of this game will undoubtedly draw criticism and praise alike, and something tells me its creators wouldn't have it any other way. If you enjoyed Hellblade, the closest comparison I can find to Indica, I would say give this one a look. However, do know that recommendation comes with an understanding that its unsettling themes, graphic violence, and bizarre sense of humor simply won't resonate with everyone. For me personally, this review was a bit of a roller coaster, but ultimately, I'm awarding Indica the Silver Genie Lamp of approval. Its thought-provoking narrative, fascinating characters, and brilliant puzzle design were enough to win me over in the end. I could also easily see this game being someone's Krampus, something they just don't like at all. And that's kinda what makes Indica so poetic and beautiful.
Those aren't my ideas. I mean, I didn't choose the monastery life.
You send that against your will or something?
Not against my will. I mean, when you're 15, the monastery isn't really a dream destination.